Chapter 16. The Very End of the World. Reepicheep was the only person on board, besides Drinian and the two Pevensies, who had noticed the Sea People. He had dived in at once when he saw the Sea King shaking his spear, for he regarded this as a sort of threat or challenge, and wanted to have that matter out there and then. The excitement of discovering that the water was now fresh had distracted his attention, and before he remembered the Sea People again, Lucy and Drinian had taken him aside and warned him not to mention what he had seen. As things turned out, they need hardly have bothered, for by this time the Dawn Treader was gliding over the part of the sea which seemed to be uninhabited. No one except Lucy saw anything more of the people, and even she had only one short glimpse. All morning of the following day they sailed in a fairly shallow water, and the bottom was weedy. Just before midday, Lucy saw a large shoal of fishes grazing on the weed. They were all eating steadily and all moving in the same direction. Just like a flock of sheep, thought Lucy. Suddenly she saw a little sea girl about her own age in the middle of them, a quiet, lonely-looking girl with a sort of crook in her hand. Lucy felt sure that this girl must be a shepherdess, or perhaps a fisheress, and that the shoal was really a flock at pasture. Both the fishes and the girl were quite close to the surface, and just as the girl, gliding in the shallow water, and Lucy, leaning over the bulwark, came opposite of one another, the girl looked up and stared straight into Lucy's face. Neither could speak to the other, and for a moment the sea girl dropped astern. But Lucy will never forget her face. It did not look frightened or angry like those other sea people. Lucy had liked that girl, and she felt certain that that girl had liked her. In that one moment they had somehow become friends. There does not seem to be much chance for their meeting again in that world or any other. But if ever they do, they will rush together with those hands held out. After that, for many days, without wind in her shrouds or foam in her bows, across the waveless sea, the Dawn Treader glided smoothly east. Every day and every hour the light became more brilliant, and still they could bear it. No one ate or slept, and no one wanted to, but they drew buckets of dazzling water from sea, stronger than wine and somehow better, more liquid than ordinary water, and pledged one another silently in deep draughts of it. And one or two of the sailors who had been oldish men when the voyage began now grew younger every day. Everyone on board was filled with joy and excitement, but not an excitement that made one talk. The further they sailed, the less they spoke, and then, almost in a whisper, the stillness of the last sea laid hold on them. "My lord," said Caspian to Drinian one day, "what do you see ahead?" "Sire," said Drinian, "I see whiteness all along the horizon from north to south, as far as my eyes can reach." "That is what I see too," said Caspian, "and I cannot imagine what it is." "If I were at higher latitudes, your majesty," said Drinian, "I would say it was ice. But it can't be that, not here. All the same, we'd better get men to the oars and hold the ship back against the current. Whatever that stuff is, we don't want to crash into it at this speed." They did as Drinian said, and so continued to go slower and slower. The whiteness did not get any less mysterious as they approached it. If it was land, it must have been very strange land, for it seemed just as smooth as the water and on the same level with it. When they got very close to it, Drinian put the helm forward over and turned the Dawn Treader south so that she was broadside on the current, and rowed a little way southward along the edge of the whiteness. In so doing, they accidentally made the important discovery that the current was only about 40 feet wide, and the rest of the sea was as still as a pond. This was good news for the crew, who had already begun to think that the return journey to Romandu's land, rowing against stream all the way, would be pretty poor sport. It also explained why the shepherd girl had dropped so quickly astern. She was not in the current. If she had been, she could have been moving east at the same speed as the ship. And still, no one could make out what the white stuff was. When the boat was lowered and it put off to investigate, those who remained in the Dawn Treader could see the boat pushed right in amidst the whiteness. Then they could hear the voice of the party in the boat, clear across the still water, talking in a shrill and surprised way. Then there was a pause while Rhinef in the bows of the boat took in a surrounding, and then, after that, the boat came rowing back, and there seemed to be plenty of the white stuff inside her. Everyone crowded in the side to hear the news. "Lilies, your majesty," shouted Rhinef, standing in the bows. "What did you say?" asked Caspian. "Blooming lilies, your majesty," said Rhinef. Some as in, same as in a pool or in a garden at home." "Look," said Lucy, who was in the stern of the boat. She held up her wet arms full of white petals and broad, flat leaves. "What's the depth, Rhinelf?" asked Drinian. "That's the funny thing, Caspian," said Rhinelf. "It's still deep, 3.5 fathoms clear." "They can't be real lilies, not what we call lilies," said Eustace. Probably they were not, but they were very like them. And when, after some consultation, the Dawn Treader turned back to the current and began to glide eastward through the lily lake of the Silver Sea, they tried both these names, but it was the Silver Sea that stuck and is now on Caspian's map. And you are asleep. And I think this is the last chapter, so I think this is like a perfect stopping point. This is a halfway point.